Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair yields back. Now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Pallone, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear that in the letter that the Republican leadership of this committee sent to NPR, they specifically said in question number 1, in the past 5 years, how many registered Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and registered voters who are not required by state law to declare an affiliation has NPR employed as part of its news media staff? And then they go into, what percentage of the board of directors were Republicans, et cetera. So, it's clear that they're asking for the political affiliation of their employees. So let me start by Mr. Aaron. What is your reaction to this Republican majority's asking a news organization to report the political affiliation of its employees?
As I said in my testimony, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a dangerous overreach. I don't think it's the government's role to tally or investigate or ask NPR leadership to keep track of the political affiliations of its reporters and editors and other employees. I think that they should be judged. The Congress has a role, of course, oversight, financial management, how is the system working? But I don't believe it's their job to do that, and I think it does impinge on journalistic freedom, that what should be judged is the work of the journalists. And as a journalist, what you're supposed to do, or at least what I learned when I went to journalism school, is you are supposed to seek out views you disagree with. You're supposed to look at multiple sources. Now, people may have complaints at one time or another about how an individual NPR reporter did that job. I think on a whole, there is that lot of good evidence of very strong journalism. Some of the other panelists here obviously might disagree, but it's not the government's role, and I actually think it is a major overreach to suggest that based on the viewpoints that you express or cover or the editorial choices, that could somehow be connected and dependent on the funding that you're offering. I think that is a path that I would discourage this committee and this Congress from going down.
Well, I'm going to go further than you and say it's not just an overreach. I think a political litmus test violates the most foundational principles of our nation. And I just think Congress has no business interrogating media outlets about the political affiliation of their employees. And I use the term McCarthy. I really do think it has troubling echoes of a very dark period of congressional oversight under Joe McCarthy, frankly. But let me ask you a second question, and you kind of got into it. Because it seems Republicans, may not understand this, does a journalist's political affiliation impact their ability to produce fair quality work, in your opinion?
Mr. Chairman, it should not. Obviously, every individual, every human brings their own biases to their job and their approach. But the job of a journalist, of course, is to go out and hear what other people think, to talk to sources, to evaluate the evidence. That's what we want our journalists to be doing. And then, that's put out into the marketplace of ideas, and we can get all the different perspectives. So that's why that shouldn't be the starting point any more than I think this committee should go ask Fox News or Sinclair or Nexstar to tell us the political affiliation of the journalists working in those newsrooms. We should look at the journalism they produce, the questions they ask, the stories they choose as viewers. If we don't like it, there are plenty of avenues to register that complaint. There are public editors, there are letters, there are comments. There are, of course, other media outlets covering many of these stories. But what's not appropriate is for Congress to say, when we don't like what this radio station is doing, and now we're going to come in and cut the funding. That's crossing a line.
Don't you, I also worry what happens in a democratic society when a political body like Congress tries to intimidate journalists because of their political beliefs. If you ask whether or not you have so many Democrats or Republicans and what your affiliation, that goes back to the McCarthyism. I mean, what happens when Congress or a political body tries to intimidate journalists or says, what your political beliefs are? Do you see that as
I do see it as a problem. Of course, I wish the journalists, the NPR leadership would push back and fight back here, but what happens and what's happened over a long period of time is these kind of inquiries, these kind of pressure, the working of the refs, it makes journalists more timid, more cautious, more unwilling to ask hard questions. That's what I worry about, that it makes them harder for them to do their job. And what we've seen, what also happens when we dismiss, threaten, describe the work of journalists in these, really harsh terms, is it also endangers journalists. We've seen political events where leaders turn and point out the journalists in the audience so everyone can yell at them and boo them when they're just there trying to report on what's happening. I worry very much about that because we benefit when we have reporters out there from public media, from commercial media, from across the political spectrum, able to do their jobs, ask the tough questions, report on what's going on. That's what we want them doing, reporting. Any effort to interfere or try to guess at their political affiliation or assume that people of different political affiliation can't ask hard questions, I think that does a great disservice.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back now.